Hello, Hobo Rider back with you again on another one of my what I'm calling tidbits, and it's hopefully give you some information on some of the things that that I did on my ride in South America, and that particular project is called South America: The Unfinished Ride. And episodes 1 and 2 have been published on my website, which is James Herbert, aka Hobo Rider. And if you haven't had a chance to watch it yet, I hope you'll take the opportunity to do so. The purpose of tidbits this particular morning is to talk about the actual ride that went over the Andes Mountain Range. I've had friends ask me, well, how come there's no picture, no footage of that particular ride? So we're going to dive into that and get back with you in just a minute. All right, back with you, dealing with that particular ride that went over the Andes Mountain Range. One of the first problems that I had with that was the weather. And the weather was raining, dense fog. And looking back, there didn't appear to be any other opportunity for any day other than that to go, because we're looking at a week of solid rain and fog in that particular area. So I made the decision to go ahead and go with the ride. For those of you who have ever used an app called Maps.me, on that particular app, when there's areas on the road that appear to be bad or dangerous, they have a little red triangle, if you will, with a black asterisk in the middle of it. And when I planned this ride over the mountain range, the whole entire ride was basically a red triangle with black asterisks. So, needless to say, it had my attention. So I was not too far from the beginning of the ride, which is where I camped. And the rain just continued. So I opted to go ahead and take the chance and go for the ride up over the mountain range. And the road itself was basically just loose gravel with potholes that there were so many potholes that you could not avoid them. And on top of that, the fact that it was raining, the potholes were all filled with water. So there was no way to judge as to how much water was in the pothole or how deep the potholes actually were. So the whole ride on that particular section was going to be about 110 kilometers. Anyhow, I started on the ride, and the gradual incline on this gravel road, as I said, with potholes that could not be avoided. And as the incline increased, we eventually got to where the switchback started, and then it got really steep. And I wouldn't even call that section an actual road. It was more like a riverbed filled with rolling rocks the size of grapefruits. Well, the problem I was having is it got to the point where I was panicking. My mind was just pretty much in the panic mode. And it was at that point where I really had to talk to myself and say, look, you need to dial this down a little bit. With the medical background that I have, I knew that if I went down, I was either going to get seriously hurt or maybe even worse. And where this ride took place, there was no help. If you went down there, you'd be waiting probably 2 to 3 hours, maybe even longer, for any help to arrive. So as I was going up this thing, as I say, in the panic mode, I kind of got my mind set that was not helping me. So I took a couple deep breaths and I told myself, Jim, I said, you know, you need to dial this down or you're going to get seriously hurt. So taking a couple deep breaths, I decided just to get out of the panic mode, loosen up the grip on my handlebars, stay on the throttle, however, though, and just try to make it up this without being in such a panic mode, white-knuckled, if you will. So with that, let's go into it just a little bit further, and I'd like to share some of those experiences as to how I corrected my mindset and eventually made it to the top and down the other side. Back with you in a minute. It's time for a tea break. Okay, back with you here on the ride over the Andes Mountain Range there, and as I had stated, I was pretty much in the white knuckle phase, and to get out of that, it took a lot of concentration on my part, and as I said before, loosening up the grip on the throttle, and just getting into a mindset that was going to allow me to make it over there in a safe fashion, if you will. But some of the things that I wanted to share with you on that was, what did I learn? probably the first thing I learned is choice of weather. Was the weather suitable for the ride that was taking place? Probably not. But then looking back on it, I would have been at least a week out before that situation was going to change. There again, having a lot of heavy rain, dense fog, and on these switchbacks, and these were 180-degree switchbacks and very, very steep. Steep to the point where if you did stop, you were probably going to be sliding backwards. And I had that situation take place in Thailand once, and sliding backwards on a steep section of road, in particular this road, was definitely not an option or not something that I wanted to happen. So anyhow, the weather was not conducive to the trip, that's for sure. The other thing was the option of actually getting hurt. Looking at the terrain that I was in, I knew full well that if you did go down in this, you were going to get either seriously hurt or maybe even, as I said, maybe even worse. And once again, noting that there is no help there. You're on your own. And the other thing I wanted to mention was the choice of my bike for this particular. It really proved to be a good choice for this particular bike as I climbed up this, I guess you're going to call it a road. I wouldn't call it a road. I eventually called it the Death Ride. But nonetheless, the bike just was incredible. It never failed me, never sputter, or whatever you want to call it. Never failed me, and it just chugged up that mountain. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again, the bike had more talent than I did. One of the things that I wanted to point out, I'm a pilot as well, but in your pilot training, one of the things they teach you is the fact that when things start going really bad, remember to fly the airplane. And I think the same was true on this particular ride. And when I was in the panic mode and death grip on the handlebars, and eventually got calmed down to the point where I had to remind myself, just ride the bike. And that's what you got to do. You got to ride the bike and just keep going. Don't get so much in this white knuckle panic mode that I was originally in, and you'll make it over the top. So, in retrospect, those are some of the things that that took place with me on this particular portion of the ride. And I learned a lot from it. I learned a tremendous amount. When I got to the other side, the satisfaction was incredible. But more than that, when I got over the final and last pass and came into this valley that I'm calling the OMG, the sensory overload was incredible. It was the most beautiful experience that I have probably ever had. And so was the ride worth it? Yeah, it was worth it. Definitely was worth it. But I learned a lot, and I hope that some of what I learned I can pass along to you in those experiences, or in the experience that I just shared with you. With that, I hope to look forward to talking to you again on some other episodes of what I'm calling Tidbits. And there's going to be some more of those, especially after I finish up with episodes 3 and 4 in what I'm calling Part 2 of South America, The Unfinished Ride. So with that, I look forward to seeing you then. This would be Hobo Rider and Miss Chili Pepper back with you. Thank you.